Every spring, for a few brief weeks, azaleas seem to set the world on fire. Hillsides glow pink, and woodland paths become tunnels of color so vivid they almost feel unreal. But azaleas are more than just ornamental shrubs. They are flowers of poetry and poison. Today, we're wandering through the history and lore of azaleas, from ancient Asian mountainsides to strange tales of mad honey.
Somewhere in England, gardeners in fancy hats are sipping tea while aggressively cutting perfectly healthy plants in half. And somehow, it makes them better. Today we're talking about the Chelsea chop, the pruning trick that keeps floppy perennials from face-planting into your sidewalk by July.
Hello and welcome to the Petal Plot Pod, a seasonal plant stories and garden tips podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Aneesa.
And I'm Eric.
Long before humans cultivated them, wild azaleas grew in cool forests and misty mountain regions across eastern Asia and the Appalachian Mountains of eastern United States. So why is it that azaleas are native to both eastern Asia and eastern North America, but not western North America or Europe or western Asia? Well, it's because they evolved from a common ancestor millions of years ago. As the continents drifted and climates shifted, these populations became geographically separated, adapting independently into the unique deciduous and evergreen species we see today. The split in the genus is tied to a fascinating botanical concept known as the Asa-Gray disjunct. First documented in the 1850s, this pattern explains why many closely related plant groups like azaleas and tulip poppers and sweet gums are found naturally in only two widely separated areas. And that's because millions of years ago, a uniform ancient ancestor of the azalea grew across the continuous landmasses of the northern hemisphere, including the ancient supercontinent Laurasia. The disjunction that exists today between eastern Asia and eastern North America is largely the result of dramatic climate and geological changes that occurred during the Neogen and Quaternary periods. Eric, I had not heard of these periods before researching this and had to Google them. Do you know or do you want to guess when the Neogen period was? How long ago it was?
My gosh. I'm going to say say it's 5 million years ago.
Great guess.
Am I even close?
It was 20 million years ago.
Yeah, really close. I haven't heard those either. Is it associated with like plant history, if you will, versus mammal dinosaur history or anything like that?
I think it's just referring to a time period in general,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe there just wasn't as much dinosaur action and that's why we don't know about it.
Right. Yeah.
Did you watch that dinosaur series on Netflix narrated by Morgan Freeman? It just came out like a few months ago.
Well, I haven't. Have you?
So we started it, but and the one amazing thing about it is it does this really great job of giving you a visual description of how much time actually passes as the world like develops, like because it's an
Yeah.
insane amount of time. Like our brains can't wrap our heads around it. So they
Yeah.
do this really great job showcasing the passage of like 250 million years and like how different animals evolved and stuff. It's also like I couldn't finish it because it was too sad. Like they made it like they made like these, I don't know, I felt really bad for some of the dinosaurs sometimes and like I couldn't go on. I couldn't finish it. But I did learn a fact, like did you know that at one point it rained on Earth for 1 million years
My gosh.
straight?
Oh, wow.
That was like 230 million years ago.
Yeah.
But
That's crazy.
anyway.
I mean, I'm going to pick up that Netflix. Sounds like a real drama.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama. Earth drama. North American azaleas are almost entirely deciduous and tend to resemble small, open, loosely branched trees. They often feature highly fragrant flowers. Most Asian species are evergreen and bred over centuries into the dense, mounding shrubs favored by modern landscaping. In the wild, azaleas often appear where the forest feels enchanted, along streams, beneath tall trees, and on foggy mountain slopes. Many cultures associated them with hidden worlds and and fleeting beauty because their blooms arrive suddenly, brilliantly, and then vanish just as quickly. The name azalea itself comes from the Greek word azaleos, meaning dry. Ancient botanists noticed that many azaleas preferred rocky, well drained soils rather than swampy ground. But why do we love azaleas so much? Well, for their color, of course. Azaleas can appear in nearly every tone of spring. Snowy white azaleas that seem to glow at dusk, pale blush pink blooms like watercolor paint, fiery orange native azaleas lighting up the woodland edges, deep crimson blossoms almost the color of velvet, lavender and lilac varieties, salmon, coral, peach, apricot shades that look almost tropical, and even bicolor blooms streaked with contrasting colors. Some blossoms even change color as they age, and others have speckled throats and ruffled petals and dark freckles. In Japan, entire garden designs were built around the subtle shifts in azalea color, moving from white to blush pink to deep magenta like a sunset unfolding across the landscape. In the American South, gardeners often planted several varieties together, so bloom times overlapped in layers of color for weeks. In the Appalachian Mountains, native flame azaleas became legendary for their glowing orange and gold blossoms. Oh, Eric, it's that time of year to go on the azalea walk at the Arb.
It's funny because I feel like every year we talk about it and we think it's happening sooner than it is, maybe. And there's a little bit of patience sometimes involved, right?
Yeah, my azalea is blooming.
Yeah.
Well, mine is
Yeah.
like just starting to bloom. It's not like fully blooming yet. Like the petals aren't quite open, so maybe a few more days.
Yeah. I only have a rhododendron in my garden, but my neighbors have an azalea across the way, and so I can see it out the window, and so
Oh, nice.
cues me in.
In Japan, azaleas have been cultivated for more than 1,000 years, and each spring, entire gardens are devoted to their blooming season. Unlike some flowers that symbolize permanence, azaleas came to represent transience, beauty that cannot last. This idea connects deeply to the Japanese aesthetic concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness that all beautiful things fade. Azaleas bloom in overwhelming abundance and then suddenly scatter. For centuries, poets compared them to passionate love, longing, and moments too brief to hold on to. And in some Japanese folklore, mountain spirits and fox spirits were said to dwell among flowering azalea thickets. Dense blooming shrubs created places where the ordinary world seemed to blur into something dreamlike and supernatural. Even today, ancient azalea festivals are held across Japan each spring, especially at temple gardens where thousands of shrubs bloom all at once. Some of the oldest cultivated azaleas in Japan are actually hundreds of old. That's old for a plant.
Yeah, that's really
It's
old.
like a
I mean,
tree, I guess,
it
you
is.
know?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking too, I had a trip to England during the springtime when all the azaleas were blooming, and I was always surprised at how massive some of them are compared to the ones
Mm.
we can grow locally here in Minnesota. They were huge and covered with blooms. It was gorgeous, but some very old varieties.
But azaleas also carry a more dangerous reputation. Nearly all parts of the plant contain toxins. These compounds can make humans and animals extremely ill if consumed. Something to think about, I guess, when we're like designing gardens with people that have dogs and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
have two dogs and an azalea, but I'm just really, really careful when I prune to not let any of the branches fall on the ground, and I
right.
remove them from the yard completely. Like I don't try to stack them for firewood or anything. They just get chucked into the alley.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you have to be aware of that. Or if you're moving into a new home, sometimes being aware of the plants that are planted there, right? Because azaleas are really common, I feel like, to have around
Mhm.
homes or framing a home so many times. So,
Yeah, they definitely are. This danger gave rise to one of history's strangest legends, the story of mad honey. In ancient regions near the Black Sea, bees sometimes gathered nectar from rhododendrons and azaleas, producing honey infused with the plant's toxins. According to historical accounts, this honey caused dizziness, hallucinations, nausea, confusion, and sometimes temporary paralysis. The Greek historian Xenophon describes soldiers accidentally eating toxic honey during a military march around 401 BCE. The men became disorientated and collapsed along the roadside, but they did recover later. Centuries afterwards, legends claimed armies intentionally used poisoned honey to weaken enemies. So while azaleas become symbols of beauty, they also carry whispers of danger. During the Victorian era, flowers became part of an elaborate language called florography. People exchanged bouquets filled with hidden meanings and coded emotions. Azaleas developed several symbolic meanings depending on color and context. They could symbolize fragile passion, femininity, remembrance, elegance, restraint, or homesickness. In some traditions, giving azaleas meant, take care of yourself for me. In others, they represented a warning about temperance or emotional caution. Because azaleas bloom so intensely and then fade quickly, they became associated with fleeting affection and emotional vulnerability. In the United States, azaleas became deeply woven into southern landscapes, combining imported and hybrid azaleas with the native azaleas. Eric, do you know which city is officially titled Azalea Capital of the World
In the US.
in the US?
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm gonna choose. It's on the East Coast.
Mhm.
Okay. And I don't know, Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
Bad choice.
It's actually Mobile, Alabama.
That's not on the East Coast.
It's in the eastern United States.
Okay.
I mean, Philadelphia is not on the East Coast technically,
But it's
right?
much on the East Coast than Alabama. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
Alabama.
arguing. The answer I gave was wrong, one way or the other. So,
No, I would
uh,
totally think of Alabama as more of like the deep south, but yeah, so Mobile is famous for its massive spring azalea blooms and its historic 10-mile azalea trail.
oh,
That sounds fun.
yeah, that does.
I would walk that.
I would walk. Well, I'd walk some of it. then, then I'd take a golf cart the rest of it.
Because azaleas require specific climates and acidic soil to thrive, their peak growing regions span the southeastern United States. But never fear, we can grow them here. They're just a little smaller.
Mhm.
There's also Palatka.
It's a
Okay.
city name. Sorry, I thought you were saying a Latin name there. I was like, this must be a hard one.
God.
This is just a
Palatka,
city name?
Florida
Jeepers. Okay.
is home to the Ravine Garden State Park, which features over 64,000 azaleas.
Wow.
Yeah, and in Somerville, South Carolina, which is known as the birthplace of southern azaleas, is famous for its 12-acre azalea park and the Flower Town Festival.
Crazy. Cool.
I mean, that sounds like a destination. Like, I feel like a vacation can be planned around this. Entire neighborhoods transformed into tunnels of pink and white blossoms each spring, and native azaleas of the Appalachian Mountains are often fragrant, airy, and delicate compared to the dense evergreen hybrids. They can often smell like cloves, honeysuckle, cinnamon, or citrus. Azaleas bloom at a threshold moment in the year. Not quite spring's beginning, not quite summer. They arrive during that lush middle passage when the earth feels newly alive. In many old gardens, azaleas were planted near pathways and entrances, almost like floral gateways into another season of life. They remind us that beauty is often temporary and therefore precious, not meant to last forever, only meant to be witnessed.
Today, we're diving into one of the most useful pruning techniques that gardeners can learn, the Chelsea chop. And despite sounding like either a dance move or a British karate class, it's actually one of the best ways to control height, improve blooms, reduce flopping, and extend flowering in your perennial garden. So, what is the Chelsea chop? So, the Chelsea chop is a pruning technique where you cut certain perennials back in late spring, usually by 1/3 or a half, right around the time the famous Chelsea Flower Show happens. And that's where the name comes from. The Chelsea Flower Show is one of the most famous gardening events in the world. It's hosted every May by the Royal Horticultural Society in London, and it's basically the Met Gala for gardeners. Incredible display gardens, cutting edge plant trends, and enough pruning opinions to start a family argument. So, British gardeners noticed that right around showtime was also the perfect timing to cut back many summer blooming perennials. And the benefits were huge: shorter, sturdier plants, less flopping, more branching, more flowers, extending the bloom season, better airflow, and just more polished garden appearance. So you're essentially telling the plant, hey, maybe don't put all your energy into becoming a 7 foot emotional support flower. So, Aneesa, have you done the Chelsea chop?
No, I haven't. I'm excited about this episode because I want to learn more about it.
Okay. Love that. I have done it on a few perennials. I probably haven't done it in all the things that I'll mention here, but I've definitely had success with it on a few things like sedum, which usually my sedum is pretty upright and does well, but I have one that for whatever reason gets floppy by mid-season. And so it kind of like hangs over and it just kind of is in the right spot now. So I did the Chelsea chop to it and it worked.
Oh,
So
wow.
no more flopping. I know.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, uh, why it works, plants like naturally want to grow upward fast in the spring. And when you cut the stems, you interrupt that upward growth hormone dominance. And so instead of one tall stem, the plant branches outward. So think like one highway becomes like four side streets: more branches, more flowers, and stronger structure. It also delays bloom time slightly, which can be actually really helpful. So, if all your garden blooms peak at once, maybe in July, the Chelsea chop could help stagger your flowering so your garden keeps color longer into even August and September. So, that can be really helpful, I think, for some of us where summer can feel like June is waiting, July is like all the things happen, and then August is like panic and like powdery mildew. So, let's talk a little bit about the best plants for the Chelsea chop. Anissa, do you have some thoughts of what you think is maybe on this list?
Well, I'm gonna guess tall sedum because you already said it.
Correct. Correct. That was a giveaway. Yes.
I'm trying to think of like what plants benefit from like pinching because it's got to be a similar
Yeah,
concept, right?
it is. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You definitely can. I mean, if you think of some of your other annuals, can definitely benefit from pinching. But when it comes to perennials, sometimes we forget like what perennials can actually be cut back or pinched back, which is kind of what you're doing here. So, sedum, yes, is one of them, and that would be the upright sedum. The low ground covering sedum probably would not benefit from this. It can create that shorter, tighter, stronger stems and fuller blooms, and you're really cutting it back by like a third here in late May. Another one would be like garden phlox, same benefits, sometimes even less powdery mildew if your phlox suffers from that, because it'll create a little more airflow potentially. And you can even cut only half the plant to kind of like stagger your flowering, which is kind of cool. And something I think I'm going to try this season. So I know I have a good chunk of phlox, and I think I'm going to try seeing if I cut half of it, if I can get it to like stagger the blooms, would be kind of cool. So I'm going to cut the front half of it so that that way when my blooms appear, they kind of grow over the old blooms and see what that looks
Oh,
like this year. Yeah.
oh, what a good idea. So if you were to do the Chelsea chop on like bee balm, you're saying you could potentially prevent powdery mildew later in the season?
Potentially, because usually it kind of opens the plant up and it doesn't like hunch over too, so it can help with that. So I think it's worth a try. But also, you could like stagger half the blooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other ones in the list, asters. They love this. I think of some of those New England asters that get super tall and maybe leggy in some gardens. And this could be a way to keep them a little more compact and loaded with more fall flowers. Your chrysanthemums or garden mums and yarrow would be another one. So kind of some fun ones to play with. I also know you can do it with like other things like goldenrod and sneezeweed, catmint. would be another great one. I have like a taller catmint, so I'm actually excited to try that and see if I can get like a little more bushier plant happen versus a very wispy one is what I have. So there's also obviously plants you should not Chelsea chop, and maybe some of this goes without saying. So I'm just gonna like mention plants that I hope no one's thinking to chop, but you'd like personally like wound it if you decided to do this. So like peonies would be a great example. If you chopped it, you would remove all the flower buds, and so you would
No. Oh,
basically
sad.
lose. Yes. So, I mean, some of it makes sense. Like, you can't do it to everything, right? Irises would be another one. You would cut all your blooms off. They are already like finished, like setting their blooms. So the foliage helps recharge the rhizomes. So keeping all that foliage is good. Columbine is kind of like a little hit or miss, but it also blooms so early for this timing. And you can deadhead it later, but maybe not necessarily a Chelsea chop. Uh, Daylilies, coneflower usually, just because they take a little bit longer to flower and we might not have enough time in our season for them to come back and flower well. So you're also considering things maybe in our growing zone, in especially here in Minnesota, where our growing season is shorter, that you have to be a little selective of things that are fast growing. So think the things that kind of tend to get too leggy by later in the season that would benefit at this time. So how do you do the Chelsea chop? So it's not a dance lesson you need to like figure out, but there's
It
actually a
sounds like it
process.
is.
It feels like I
Sounds
kind of
like there
wish there
should be a
was.
dance to do the Chelsea chop.
I know. I agree. Yes. So again, your timing is late May to early June here in Minnesota. And generally, your plants are already like 12 or 24 inches tall at this time and actively growing, but yet not flowering. So if something has flower buds on it, you're too late. But your cut amount, you can cut a third for moderate control or up to like half of the plant for like aggressive control. And so I also think it's kind of a pro move if you're going for half the plant because it seems tedious. Like, oh my God, I just cut this in half and how much time did I just add before I'm going to see flowers on this plant? So maybe a third is always safe to try out on some of it. And like I said before, try it out on like just part of the plant. Like maybe it's just like a little clump of it. You test it out and see how it works this season for you. There's also people that will stagger cuts. So continuing the Chelsea chop over a 2 to 3 week period, which kind of creates rolling bloom seasons, which maybe some of us plant nerds would really love this strategy to kind of manage your bloom season or extend it throughout. Again, I think you need to have like a good clump of this perennial that you're doing this to kind of have those successions or maybe multiples across your garden where you could have some bloom early, the next one's been Chelsea chopped and then blooms later, and kind of goes across your garden that way.
Oh, I am excited to try this with my aster. I have a huge clump of tall
Mm,
aster,
yeah,
and I love this idea of doing the Chelsea chop, like, around it so that it has a different shape, so it's not just, like, straight up stems and then flowers, but, like, to have, like,
yeah,
lower levels of flowers that will
right.
maybe that still won't look so leggy. Oh, I am doing this. The time is now too, right? Yeah, I'm gonna
It
do it.
is, yes. I mean, if you're following anything on social media, the Chelsea Flower Show is here, so that's a great cue to get in and do it. And why not test it out and see what happens? Yeah. So I will also mention here there's obviously just another pruning awareness since we're talking about kind of pruning during the Chelsea chop. And that's like spring blooming shrubs because you may be like, oh, can I Chelsea chop my shrubs? And so things like our lilacs and forsythia, magilla, things that bloom early, you do want to prune after flowering because they set their blooms on old wood, right? And we don't want to cut those blooms off. Same with like evergreens. You're going to see a lot of new growth on evergreens, and you can prune many of them, just not aggressively pruning like spruces, firs, or pines, especially not into the old wood. You can do candle pruning on pines because most of them have their little candles, which is the new growth that is happening. And so you can pinch those off and maintain the size of your evergreens in that way too. But it's not quite the same Chelsea chop, take off a third or half of the plant type moment for sure. Lastly, I feel like in some other tips and tricks is so after you've done the Chelsea chop, it's a great time to also feed your plant. So light fertilizing after pruning can help push that healthy branching more, but don't do heavy nitrogen bombs on it. So you want to make sure you're pushing for flower growth more so. Make sure you water consistently after pruning just so that it can do a good recovery. So, if you've ever looked at your late summer garden and thought, why does everything look exhausted and leaning on each other for emotional stability? The Chelsea chop might become your new favorite gardening technique. Done correctly, it gives you stronger stems, longer bloom season, healthier airflow, and a garden that looks intentional instead of mildly chaotic. And remember, good pruning isn't about making plants smaller, it's about helping them perform better. Hey, Aneesa, do we have a listener question for today?
Oh, yeah, we do. Let me see here. Okay. Carrie writes in and asks, what should I be thinking about before I buy a climber that attaches to the house? I'm sure plastic versus wood siding has differences. And she's attached a picture if you want to pull that up, Eric. This comes from Proven Winners having this stunning post. This can't be real life, but could it be Zone 5 life? And the picture is of the 2026 Rose of the Year Rise Up Lilac Days Rosa. Beautiful. It is gorgeous. Look at those flowers.
Wow, very nice. Okay, thanks for the question, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
I feel like I think you need to be ready for the commitment of pruning. I think all roses have maintenance, but I think climbers have more maintenance. Is it going to get really good sun? Because I always feel like they always do best in full sun locations. And then I feel like it's like having a little bit of the infrastructure. Like, what is it going to be adhered to? Because climbing roses have long canes that you train onto a structure.
Yeah, that's great advice with roses to give them a structure that you're going to kind of guide them to where you want them to be. And
Yeah.
this rose looks like it's going to get 6 to 8 feet tall. So just kind of long-term planning. Is it going to cover a window? Where do you want to place it artfully so that it like wraps around like the corner of a house or the side of a porch? If it was a different type of vine that had suction cups or things like that, I would
Yeah.
definitely be cautious of letting those go on
Yeah.
anything that's like wood or vinyl or stucco, whereas like brick is probably fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for my roses, because I have several climbing roses, I try to look for a good hardy rose. I also think the structure you put on it, like I said, you're going to have to tie it in. So if that's like an arbor or a trellis or something, you're literally using like garden twine and tying it to those principles. This year, actually, I have one that is against my house, and I will actually install wire, a thicker gauged wire that'll go from 2 points basically on my house on the wall. And I will be tying those canes then to that wire. And I think the other thing is you will get more flowers by rather than tying them straight up to actually put them at a slight horizontal so that you actually will get more blooms. The roses naturally will want to grow up. And so when you make it more horizontal, you'll actually get more bloom stems coming off of that main cane, and you'll get more flowers that way. And don't be afraid, I think, to prune them down as you get them going because you don't need 38 canes coming from one rose. You really need like six because they're going to produce so many other side branches.
Yeah, I saw that done with climbing hydrangea where they had used wire and
Yeah.
stretched it across. And even that can be done, very artfully, right? In how you
Yeah.
um, tie the wire to something. And then, yeah, it had all these horizontal branches and it was just full of flowers.
I've also have one climbing rose that's kind of in the middle of a garden, and I just let it go a little rambly. So it does come out and does this arching, but because it only gets 6 to 8 feet, it doesn't intrude on other spaces. So I like the arching habit that it has. And I'm okay with that too. But I think if you're doing it on the side of the house, that's always something you're probably adhering it to a trellis system. I would also mention if you're doing it against a building, same with like against a fence or other wall, anything, like you'd actually need to bump it out at least a foot to 18 inches, even 24 inches, because there's no moisture. Right up against your house or space. So making sure you have enough space to bump it out, you can point it a little bit towards the house, but the root structure and everything should be away from your house so it actually gets moisture. Because many of us have overhangs on the side of our houses and whatnot.
Yeah. And of course, best practices for planting any rose or climbing rose would be plant in full sun. Make sure you have some fresh compost in the ground. Give it root stimulator when you plant it. Keep
Yep.
that rose specific fertilizer on hand and prune well.
Yeah. Sounds good. Good luck, Carrie. We're looking forward to seeing more photos of your rose.
Yes, absolutely. Can't wait. If you have a gardening question you'd like us to answer, please write to us at petalandplot@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and click the follow button to hear our next episode.
As garden designers here at Petal and Plot, we also offer year-round in-person and virtual gardening consultations and custom garden designs as well. Want to see more of what we're up to? Please follow us on Instagram at Petal and Plot. That's PETALNPLOT.